a very engaging session coming up. So I welcome Mr. Karthikeyan Nilkandan, Head of Infosys India, and request him to give his opening remarks on the occasion.
Respected Mighty Secretary, NASSCOM President, CEO of NEGD, and fellow panelists, and over 330 participants who have joined today. It gives me a great privilege to participate in today's discussion. The theme of the discussion is implementing trustworthy AI solutions. The word trustworthy means reliable, honest, secure, principled, ethical, and truthful. Any government to citizen or government to business solutions are expected to be responsible, transparent to the citizens, equitable, and dependable. Such solutions improve the efficiency for the citizens, result in positive outcomes, and at an optimized cost. However, unethical AI can lead to mistrust. Let me elaborate through an example. Last month, there was an accident involving a driverless car. This happened somewhere in US. You would be aware that the autonomous vehicles extensively use AI technologies, and any user of such a car is expected to ask, is this a reliable machine? Has this been manufactured by a responsible product vendor? How will conflict be addressed? How is it programmed to address certain ethical and conflicting situations? For example, if a pedestrian illegally crosses, how is this autonomous car expected to behave? Will it hit the pedestrian, or will it endanger the people who are sitting inside the car? Will the machine behave differently if that pedestrian happens to be a woman? If it is a child, how will it behave? Or if it is an elderly person, what has it been programmed for? And what if a group of illegal pedestrians cross? Is it different from an individual crossing? I mean, these are all conflicting situations. And a very interesting survey was conducted by Nature.com in October 2018. It was called as a Moral Machine Survey. And this survey kind of gave 13 scenarios to respondents, 2.3 million respondents across 100 plus countries, as to how will such moral conflicts be perceived in the various countries. It really depends on the culture, the gender, and the background of the people. And the results are fascinating. For example, countries like Finland and other developed countries where there are mature legal and governance systems, they did not find it inappropriate to for the pedestrian to be hurt or injured or killed in that accident. However, the view of the developing countries were very different. The reason I had pointed this out is in situations which involve life or death, situations involving health, situations involving reputation, it is very, very important to ensure that the ethics and the trustworthy aspects of AI are carefully taken care of, and it is used to augment human judgment. Okay? There are many other use cases in the field of police tech, in the field of health tech, in the field of agri-tech, and in the field of defense tech, where similar dilemmas exist. For example, in the field of police tech, how is crime prevention handled? There are biases which creep in, be it a racial bias or a gender bias. One needs to be sensitive to it. In the field of medical tech, how do you prioritize patients who require treatment, especially in a constrained scenario? We are seeing this happening during COVID. In the field of fintech and tax domain, Nandan spoke about how Infosys has worked with GST network to ensure fraud is detected. There is a business intelligence and fraud analytics unit within GST, which has been able to save crores of rupees of taxpayers and catch the non-compliant people by using machine learning technologies in a trustworthy and ethical manner. And what about areas like defense tech where autonomous drones are used? Here again, who decides what is the right thing to do for the drone? So it is important that there is a very structured engineering process behind building and implementing trustworthy AI solutions. This has been laid down by the Software Engineering Institute at Carnegie Mellon University. There are 4 aspects to implementing and building such systems. First is the data management. Second is building algorithms and models. Third is how do you operate such systems? And the fourth is about governance and ethical aspects. Any of these systems have inbuilt bias, and it is very difficult to be completely objective. However, the bias can sometimes be purposeful and helpful, but the goal is to ensure that the unintended and harmful biases are removed from AI systems. The first of the biases is at the source, which is on the data. The data is created by humans, and these days, data is also created by machines in case of IoT systems. The data are curated and organized by humans, and there are bias which creeps in at that point. There are organizational biases, which the organizations which develop such systems have. And there are model training biases which happen. One needs to ensure that such biases and risks are fully thought through and unintended consequences are avoided. The second important aspect is to ensure that algorithms are accurate and they are checked for unintended biases. Algorithms have to be stable. By that, what we mean is that a small change in input cannot lead to disproportionate change in the output. In the public sector context, algorithms have to be explainable. By that, what I mean is there are various range of stakeholders who use the system in government context. There could be auditors who want full traceability of a particular decision. There could be regulators. There could be citizens who may file a public interest litigation and asking why a certain particular decision was made or why a certain transaction has been called as a fraud. There could be a judge who would seek more details and transparency on the decision. Therefore, it is important for algorithms to be explainable in the context of G2C and G2B systems. Most importantly, government officers have to be sensitive to the adoption-related challenges, because in public sector, it is not practical or possible to force everybody to adopt systems. Now, most importantly, you need a very diverse set of people to build trustworthy AI systems. And when we say diverse, you need people with data background like data scientists, product managers, programmers, machine learning experts, system architects, UX researchers, HCI or human computer interface practitioners, digital anthropologists. The more diverse the team that builds and implements trustworthy AI systems, the more innovative the solution tends to be. This has been proved with empirical evidence. Also, such diverse teams are fact-focused and they process the facts carefully. And finally, the team has to ensure that the system is accountable to humans. And they recognize the risks and benefits of the various choices made while building and implementing a trustworthy AI system. Such a system has to be secure, honest, and usable. And finally, trustworthy AI is about augmenting the human judgment, not replacing it. Thank you.
Thank you, the entire MeitY organization, Abhishek Singh ji, and other dignitaries on this particular panel for giving me this wonderful opportunity. So what I will do is I have a small presentation. In fact, my colleague Karthik has covered beautifully some of those information, and I will deep dive further. So what I'm going to do is some of the implementing trustworthy AI solutions, some of the best practices that we could utilize, and also the experiences that we have got or learned from the projects that have been executed. I'll quickly walk through. And as part of some of the digital data standards initiatives, I was also closely associated with the global aerospace committees. So some of those inferences also I will bring to your notice so that we can learn together as a team. This particular slide gives a kind of quick summary about the AI and its competitive advantage. I don't want to dwell too much on this. In fact, my earlier speakers have given a beautiful narrative summary of the AI and how it is going to benefit the entire community. Okay. AI can help organizations to improve their top line in terms of creating smart products, smart services, and use that to help them grow faster and much better. AI can help improve the organization's the efficiency part of it, whether you're calling it as smart factories led by the Industry 4.0 or the smart organization, smart utilities, healthcare, and logistics, and other systems like education. My predecessors have spoken a lot about it. So there are immense benefits of AI. And one of the important aspects, in fact, Karthik has mentioned many of these, are safety, security, compliance, and regulations. How do you ensure? Okay. And AI is a big vehicle to ensure all these aspects of safety, security, compliance, and regulations. I will go a little deeper into this in the next few slides. So if you look at AI trustworthiness perspective, and some of the major industries like the aerospace, automotive that Karthik has mentioned about the accident and things like that, and other industries like the nuclear industry and other regulatory critical industries, if you look at, the way they are adopting is in terms of two-pronged approach. One is most of the machines that are there today, they're all human-driven and human control, right? And the skilled people can drive those machines, whether it is an aircraft or a ship or a car, much diligently and use that machine perfectly. And now we are getting into a new world where this entire human-driven will be machine-driven and human-controlled. Okay. Here it is very, very important that it is not machine control. It is machine-driven but human control. At the end of the day, humans should be able to control it while machine drives it. So that's the direction that entire industry moving towards. And this entire thing has to be achieved in an AI trustworthiness framework. And some of these concepts are very, very important and critical. Safety aspects, fairness, there should not be any bias in doing it. Explainability, whatever you do, you should be able to explain. Accountability, you are accountable for whatever suggestion that AI engine is giving. Performance, transparency, redundancy, it is very, very important here. If some system fails, the next subsystem should be able to take care of it. Security and privacy. These are the 8 pillars on which the entire AI trustworthiness framework is laid out. And I'll just give you a quick snapshot of one of the important disciplines which I'm very closely associated with is the aeronautics. Aeronautics AI trustworthiness. This entire aeronautics AI trustworthiness was set up by the regulators. In fact, both FAA, EASA are working a lot on this. And of course, our own DGCA is working immensely. And this is a framework, AI trustworthiness framework that EASA has put together. What they have come out is there are 3 levels of maturity. One is level 1, assistant to human. So whatever AI is there, it is going to provide assistance to humans. That is level 1. And in fact, that is the stage where we are currently. That is 2019 to 2024. Then the next level is human-machine collaboration. Okay? This is very, very important, where we are taking the AI to the next level. Okay? Here, human performs a particular function, machine monitors and observes. Okay? Then the next level is level 2B, is machine performs a function and human monitors. And third level, level 3, is all about more autonomous machine. Okay? So here, machine performs functions with no human intervention in operation. Human is in the loop at design and oversight time. So this is a level 3. So they are planning to reach this level 3 by 2035. So that is the nature of this particular industry. It is a highly regulatory industry, and close to around 300 to 400 people travel in an aircraft. And if the aircraft is driven by the AI machine, AI engine, this is what it takes to. And every step has to be very, very mature, and it has to be done very diligently. So that's why this particular framework has been put together by EASA and the FAA and DGCA. They're all moving towards it. Just, I will give you some more AI examples, some of the best practices that we could think about. The close to my heart, some of those large assets, while the utilities, healthcare, and the general public application that have already been dealt about. But I will take some of those industrial use cases, let's say what we can learn from them. Some of these industrial assets, you can see the aircraft, the turbo machinery, aircraft engine, or the heavy duty truck that you're operating in a mining facility. Most of these equipment are being maintained by a schedule-based maintenance currently. Okay? And everyone is moving towards condition-based maintenance based on the data that you collect from these machines and use the data to effectively manage these machines. Okay? So this is done for the core business value of reducing the maintenance cost, reducing the operation cost, and also increasing the availability of these assets. And you can see some of those open literature information that is there. There is an ARP document, aerospace recommended practices document that has been produced by SAE International. From there, I picked up some of these. US helicopter fleet has been utilizing this condition-based maintenance and the kind of savings that they got. In fact, our own public sectors, like the Goa shipyard with whom we are working, they have embarked on a wonderful AI journey. They are using it for their own assets, the ships that they build, and they are using some of these AI techniques to move from condition-based maintenance philosophy of these ships to schedule-based maintenance philosophy to the condition-based maintenance philosophy led by AI. If you look at the typical approach that everybody adopts, as Karthik mentioned, the data comes from the humans. Here, the data comes from not only from the humans, but the machines. There's a huge amount of data that is there. You need to capture the data, store it, cleanse the data, prepare the data, do the initial exploratory analysis, do the event detection, develop some of these event detection models, develop the prediction, the prognostic models, and things like that. This is a typical approach that you follow. There is nothing that is new that I'm telling you, all know about it. But what I'm trying to bring is some of the practical aspects of it. Okay? So as Karthik, Nandan, and everybody mentioned, data is very, very important and sacrosanct. After data, the models, the people, then entire operations part of it. So to make a particular AI model perfect, you need a large set of data. Okay, this particular data may not be available for you. Okay, because there are a lot of cases that comes in when you operate in an aircraft, when you operate in a ship, innumerable conditions. Okay, all the data you need to collect it. Okay, so if you have a gap that is there, is essentially the gap in the data available, gap that is there in the models, gap that is there in the next set of it. But most of it, the gap today is in the data side of it. The available AI models are very good, very well fine-tuned, but still a lot of research is going on. So that is where you have this gap. How do you solve this particular gap? You need to use the other disciplines as well. AI, along with AI, the physics and engineering part of it. When you operate an aircraft is flying based on certain physics. Okay, you need to understand those physics and engineering, bring together the best of engineering, best of AI, then you will be able to bridge some of these gaps. And also the domain knowledge, the domain that you are operating, whether it is a healthcare or education or any other sector, you have immense domain knowledge. You need to bring that knowledge together with AI. Then you will be able to answer a lot of this question that comes from the fairness, explainability, reliability, traceability, security, regulations, and compliance. Okay, and also you need to use some of those additional digital technologies that are available, like blockchain. I'm happy that MeitY has put together AI and the blockchain documents together. They are going hand in hand. That is where you need to bring those blockchain aspects, to bring the traceability part of the data and accountability part of the data. Okay, that comes from the technology. Use the technology lever, okay, to mature the AI trustworthiness aspect of it. Then the other one important thing I just want to bring to your notice is all about there are a lot of dilemmas that are out there. In the sense, one simple thing I think many of you know, there was a failure of a huge number of washing machines across northern part of India some time back. There was a big news article that has come in the newspapers and things like that. Then the washing machine manufacturer has put a small panel to understand why these washing machines are failing. Then they came back and then said there is an interesting story. Washing machines in those regions are majorly being used as a lassi making machines in the summer rather than using it for the clothes washing. And that puzzled the washing machine manufacturer, because the washing machine was designed for certain loads, okay, that it is going to subject. Now it is being used for a completely different use case and different territory, and that information was not available. And there is two parts to it. One, how do you improve this machine, okay, the washing machine? The second thing is the need for such machine, okay, that people are looking at is another one. In fact, this is a snippet that I just want to bring to your notice, just to raise the perspective, just to bring the perspective, okay. So the data that you have collected, you need to be very, very careful, okay. You need to have that traceability. That's what is very, very important. And I will conclude my session in one of the, with this particular slide. In fact, industry ecosystem should come together, okay? That's very, very important and key. In fact, MeitY is doing that wonderful job of bringing together everybody. And this is essentially to build the requirements, specifications, standard, data, technology, whether it is in terms of models or any other downstream processes. It's very, very important. One thing that we all need to remember is the way Volvo did in 1959. This is a small snippet that I have used from their website. Is essentially Volvo invented this 3-point seat belt that we are using it in our cars today. They made this patent public for all, okay? The reason that they brought this patent to public is it has more value as a free life-saving tool than something to profit from. So we have to learn from this. Industry has to come together. We as a team should work coherently. And more than anything, it is humans that are very, very precious for us. And it is the benefit of the society that we all need to work together as a single team. That's the last slide that I have. With that, I thank you for this wonderful opportunity.
Thanks, Ravi, for the wonderful session. I'll spend only a few minutes articulating what are we doing in the education space. And we had a good fortune of hearing Nandan as well talking about many of these solutions. Before I start, one thing which actually I quite enjoyed, especially in terms of a quotation, is John Dewey's comment: "If we teach today as we taught yesterday, we rob our children of tomorrow." So, which means the way the world is evolving and the way the technology is evolving, it is absolutely imperative for all educational institutions, including corporate learning, to leverage those technologies and ensure that we reimagine, redefine the way we teach and we learn. So that's what actually happens. And then in line of this industry 4.0, the education 4.0 is obviously gravitating towards more personalized, collaborative, adaptive and experiential practices. We at Infosys, we thought we need to demystify this. What does it mean, and how do we basically bring in these technology solutions to make sure that learning is extremely immersive, personalized and experiential, is where we brought this concept of 4 principles. How do we make learning convenient? How do we make learning relevant? How do we make learning fun and engaging? And then how do we make learning relevant? There's a typo there, but how do we make learning help you in your career and everything? So what we have done is we have adopted multiple technologies, including AI, AR, VR, the latest mean stack, merge stack, open source technologies, all of that. We developed our own learning platform. But for this session, I'm going to focus more on how are we basically build it, how did we build this AI solutions in the space of learning at Infosys. And I think this is something that some of the other institutions are already doing. And as Ravi articulated, it may make more sense to kind of have many people join hands and definitely reimagine education as we move forward. So I'll just talk about the use cases on the AI solutions. The first thing that we have done is instead of looking at creating more and more questions in a manual way, we have leveraged this fantastic AI solution, and we basically brought this automated question generation. So what you do is you basically ingest the content, and leveraging the power of AI and the AI algorithms and different kind of machine learning and deep learning techniques, you have this ability to interestingly generate questions, so the learning by questions can actually become very interesting. So you can do it both ways. One is you can learn where the questions are basically read out to you or presented to you when you ingest a particular content, and then you can answer it, or you basically ask a question and the machine learning algorithms will help you with answering that particular thing. My team has also done a fantastic job in automated scoring and assessments and grading itself, which means as and when you have plenty of data that is accumulated based on the different assessments that are happening, how do you know what kind of patterns are emerging? What does the pattern mean? Is there a way to kind of relook at the grading of your questions or grading of your responses, or fine-tune your responses? So that is something that we are doing using AI. Everyone is using this not just in education, but personalized search and recommendations. So instead of a search resulting in outcomes or information that everyone sees the same way, leveraging what is your learning history, learning capability, as well as learning trends, how do you intelligently provide meaningful search results when you are looking for information itself is another use case. And again, we are living in the world of COVID where everything is virtual, and obviously our own learning at Infosys has been virtual now, leveraging our platform. But in that, when we look at the competency assessments and when we look at certifications, again, my team has done a fabulous job of creating a virtual proctoring setup, where not only you do virtual proctoring, but they have intelligently created these anomalies and insights coming out of it, which helps us to kind of create a very ethical way of managing this certifications and the way the people actually take the exams and things like that. So these are some things that we have done. And if you go to the next level, what we have done with trustworthy AI solutions in the education space is, when you have so much of content, so much of data, and providing a lot of information, how do we drive curiosity towards in the minds of learners? And that is where we have come up with this concept graphs and knowledge graphs, where any topic that you search, the machine learning algorithms intelligently provide you the nearest concepts and the adjacent concepts and adjacent topics, so that without opening a particular content or opening a particular topic full-fledged prayer, how do you make sure that you get that meaningful insights of the connections and adjacency itself? The other thing we are using AI solutions are in terms of while you are learning, how do you kind of intelligently find the right expertise so that while you are learning on yourselves, by yourselves on the self-learning platform, how do you still have the capability and ability to learn from experts so that you basically kind of get the best of everything? Especially in a corporate setup like what we are at Infosys, while you are in a particular domain and you're working in a particular domain, is there a way we can give you intelligent recommendations on what else can be learned in an adjacent industry, in the other industry is the next one. Recently, we have developed a virtual mentor framework and virtual mentoring system where we have kind of used the AI system to help you with improving your the body language, the audio modulations, and the way you are articulating your responses on a particular subject matter. So not only you have an ability to have a mentoring done by someone synchronously or asynchronously, but you have AI providing only to you insights in terms of what you can do better in terms of your presentation skills, your own articulation of a particular topic understanding. We are all extremely fascinated with the way Google and Amazon and Netflix provides intelligent recommendation. We call this basket analysis services, which means based on what you are learning and based on someone else who has learned the same thing, how do you meaningfully create this association, and based on that you kind of provide intelligent recommendations is the other one. We have also developed a conversational search. We still need to improve on it, but instead of just doing a Q&A kind of responses using our virtual assistant, we are now trying to build conversational search like you do with a real educator or real teacher. How do you make sure that you are able to meaningfully carry forward the conversations and make your employees learn better? And the other important thing is the sentiment analysis, I think, which is there in pretty much every industry. Are the learners happy learning a particular content? Are they engaged? If they are not engaged, what is the kind of pattern that is emerging, and the insights coming out is the sentiment analysis. And we have also done some interesting work on how do we make sure that every year when we are hiring this 25,000 college graduates, is there a way we can create a predictive modeling around how they learn? And if they are able to learn, and if there is something that is varying, how do you make course correction happen, and that give it as a kind of a tool to both the educator and the learner, so that they are actually improving their learning capability. So we have fantastic information of last 10-15 years on how people from different colleges, different subjects and different levels of learning capability, how they have learned and how they have progressed. Using that, we have created this predictive modeling that helps us to kind of continuously improve the quality of our college graduates joining Infosys and getting trained by us. And then most of you would have heard the Live Enterprise thinking that Infosys has recently published. If not, my recommendation is for you to kind of look at the Live Enterprise book. It will give you a lot of insights around how, as an organization, we are continuously sensing, feeling, responding, evolving, and continuously learning. And in the same spirit, what we have done is we have created this nudge framework where, based on what you are doing, based on what you are working on, you get intelligent nudges and intelligent kind of guidance that helps you in your professional world. Like Siri and Alexa, we have created Zoe, which is our own digital learning assistant, which continuously guides you in your learning. It responds to you. It actually takes questions for you based on how you answer. It recommends what you learn and all of that. So a fantastic digital learning assistant is something that we have provided our employees. And then, taking inspiration from Google Map, we have created our own learning navigator. We call it as Atlas, which actually gives a real-time insights around how all the different people are learning. Still anonymized aggregation happens, but it gives you fantastic insights in terms of who is learning, what is the trending topic. If you are stuck, who can you reach out to, and then while you are learning what adjacencies can be done and everything. So these are some of those fantastic use cases that we have developed, and all of this is helping us become more learning organization in the true spirit, and it is also helping us to kind of expand our talent capability that the previous panel discussions talked about. I'll just show you some illustrations. This is what is the GenQ, which is our AI-powered platform, generating questions, generating responses. You can throw a volume of content to it and it will help you to learn. This is the concept graph basically that gets created, and it actually helps you to kind of navigate from one dot or one graph to another graph. Thereby you know how to kind of phase your learning. This is our Zoe learning assistant, where you can talk to, you can type in, it guides you in terms of what you do. This is where the recommendations, the basket analysis that I talked about, helps you while you are learning. Like Amazon, Netflix provides you, our learning recommendations are very meaningful and powerful. And this is the learning navigator at Infosys, which continuously tells you how many people are learning with you and how do you connect with them, and you can do a lot of meaningful additional things on this. So all of this is what we have done at Infosys. I'm happy to see if there are other use cases. We'll be more than happy to leverage that, and if someone wants to learn more about it, we are more than happy to share this. Before I close it, what we have done is all these learnings, we have created it as a full-fledged platform. We call this platform Lex internally, but now we are also taking this platform and providing to India as well as world. Recently, we launched Infosys Head Start, where you can actually find our learning platform, including a lot of good learning content on different topics, along with some of these solutions will be there for you to take advantage of. And then we are also doing this across the world with Reskill Restart, InfyTQ, where engineering students can benefit from it. And then Wingspan is something that we use it to take it to our clients. So exciting world that we are in, where the power of technology can further amplify how you can kind of enhance the quality of education.
So what we thought was, I'll just share a small screen. The Kruti 4.0 framework is all about the predictive maintenance part of it. So we have already covered in the main session. We thought we'll just use this opportunity to solve some of the contemporary problem. I mean, one of our colleagues has already asked one question on the COVID side of it. So looking from that angle, what we thought was we will bring some of those use cases that we have been working on, more specifically AI for health safety applications. So these are much more being utilized for the public, and also some of the sectors like the utilities and mining. So I'm going to demonstrate some of those applications now. The first part is there are a set of AI applications that we have developed as part of the COVID response and deployed in our campuses. Of course, now we are working out of home, but earlier during in the middle of the pandemic, we opened our campuses to the extent that is possible with a lot of technology solutions in place, and we developed some of those solutions and deployed in our campuses. So those are three broad category of application. One is the elevated body temperature application. Okay. So as you know, when you measure a particular temperature of an employee who is coming to the campus, now you have various options, right? These are handheld guns and other automated devices and things like that. But these handheld guns, when you bring that gun closer to the human head, the person who is measuring and also the person who is being measured, both are susceptible violating those the social distancing norms and things like that. So what we have done is we have developed a kind of approach where we kept a kind of thermal camera at a particular distance, and each of the employee can walk in and face the camera, and the camera takes the thermal image, and that particular thermal image is being analyzed by our AI algorithm. So we are tracking the face of that particular person, and going closer to the eyes, the two regions where the temperature measured near that near the eyeballs. Okay, so that is very, very important. That temperature can be taken as a body temperature. So our algorithm is able to identify that particular feature of an eye, okay, closer to eye, and identify the temperature at that particular location, and based on that identify whether that particular person is okay or not okay to enter into the campus. That is one. The second one is on the social distancing. So what we have done is we have put some of these cameras in some of the important locations like the food courts and things like that. So using that particular cameras, we have identified the people within that particular frame and measured the distance between those people. And in the sense, this is all, again, you have the 2-3 cameras focusing, and then based on that, you can really measure the distance between the people and create a kind of dashboard on the adherence of the social distance. Okay, so how many people are adhering to the social distancing norm, how many are not, so that you will be able to take the appropriate action. Okay. Then the third one is face mask compliance. Also, here again, the cameras are put in particular places, and the camera feed is being analyzed, and you can identify how many people are wearing the mask, how many people are not wearing the mask. You will have an overall summary. You can track that particular person. So that's another important application. These are 3 important applications that we have deployed and used it. Okay, I will show one such application and then demonstrate that. This is a kind of elevated body temperature application that we have developed. Okay, so if you look at any of these public places like the airport and things like that, there is a huge number of people who are moving around. And if you want to measure the temperature of each of these persons, you can use all these devices, whether it is a handheld, a gun, laser gun kind of thing, or a thermal imaging kind of thing. But here again, you will have the problem of the distance between the person who is being measured, the person who is measuring it, and things like that. So this has some of those difficulties. Even if you use some of these thermal scanners, still you have that particular problem. In fact, if you can put these thermal scanners and then remotely monitor it. But this has some of these problems of getting a lot of noise, because there are many people moving around, and all these people come into a particular frame, and the results can be distorted. Okay, and the person who is having the temperature, person who is not having the temperature, it is very, very difficult to measure accurately in the particular crowd. To avoid this particular problem, what we have introduced is Infosys AI-based solution, where people walks in a particular queue or a line, and they face the camera, and the thermal camera takes that particular image, okay, and uses that particular image whether the person is okay to enter or not okay to enter. So the way it works is that entire thermal image has been taken, and then that image has been isolated, the face part of it. Okay, then the face is being identified for various obstructions, something like the glasses and things like that. We will ask the people to remove the glasses, okay, mainly because we are identifying the temperature near the tear ducts. Tear ducts are the places where the temperature measurement or the body temperature can be measured accurately. So that is the reason we are segregating the portions and then identifying the tear duct regions, measuring the temperature at that particular region, and then allowing a person whether he is okay or not okay. And any such other events that happens, we have a standard operating procedure that takes care of it, and the AI takes care of this accurate measurement. Okay. So that's one typical application. Then I'll just run the social distancing. So this is a food court in one of our campuses. So you can see some few people are moving around in the food court. So you can identify the distance that is shown as green indicates that they are within that particular distance norm. There is no problem there. If it is a different color, then depending on the risk profile, we are just identifying. And this entire information is available as a dashboard, which can be used by the enterprise, that Infosys. Okay, and similarly, the mask compliance. Okay, so you can get the feeds. Okay, these are all video feeds, and those video feeds can be analyzed in parallel. Okay, and identify the people who are wearing the mask, who are not wearing the mask, and that entire thing can be used for the mask compliance part. Then the other important application that we have been working on is in the utility sector. So this is on the visitation management and the fire detection. So one of the biggest problems that we face in the utilities is more specifically related to the fire. Okay, so these transmission lines and the distribution lines, the electricity grids, when they go along these deep forests and rivers, there are a lot of risks associated with it. In a summer, it can create a kind of problem when the vegetation growth comes very close to these transmission lines. There is a susceptibility of having that fire and things like that. In fact, a lot of these organizations have been sued for the fire hazard and things like that. So for this, they have a large teams who are working on the vegetation management. Whenever a tree comes very closer to this transmission lines, they cut those trees and things like that. It's a huge laborious task altogether. Okay, so here again, we are using some of these AI techniques to monitor the vegetation growth. So what we are doing is, these images have been captured by either drones or the fixed wings, and those images have been passed through our deep learning algorithms, and we can identify the vegetation that is coming closer to these transmission lines, identify the risk profile of that particular region, and then pass back to our back office to take the necessary action. In the sense, if AI is not there, these a huge amount of videos, somebody has to crawl manually and identify the reasons of risk. Okay? Now, with this application, we are able to identify the reasons much quickly, much faster, because every day is important for us to provide the feedback back to the office so that they can take the corrective action. And similarly, we are also using AI to detect the fire, to detect the smoke and other things. Okay, it is exactly the same thing, more or less. It's all AI-based deep learning algorithms that we are using, okay, to solve this particular problem. I'll just run one small demo for the vegetation management, the work that we are doing, more specifically utilizing some of these deep learning algorithms to solve the problems of the wildfire and things like that. Okay, so this is the common problem that we have today. During the summer, during the spring, a lot of these areas are fire hazard and things like that. And this particular problem has been faced by the utilities companies across the globe. To solve that, they do these traditional approaches to mitigate the risk, cutting the trees and things like that. So that is entirely a manual approach. So what we are doing now, essentially, flying the drones or the air vehicles along these lines, okay, capturing the images and use those images for effectively identifying the reasons for the risk. That is what we are doing through these deep learning algorithms. Okay, so you can see here, this is a typical video feed. Okay, and you can pass this video feed through the deep learning algorithms, okay, and identify the reasons of a risk and reasons of safe reasons and reasons of safety. Okay, and so I'll just a little bit scroll further. So you can see here. So that image has been forwarded. That image has been characterized into two different parts. Right? The transmission lines have been identified as a red color, and the vegetation is identified as a green color. Okay? And you can see here, there is a small vegetation growth that is happening below the transmission lines. There is a vegetation that is happening very close to these transmission lines. These are not allowed. You have to take a necessary action. So this particular AI algorithm, it is able to crawl through that and identify those reasons. And we have a risk profiling at the back end. And that risk profiling will be able to identify the reasons where you need to look at it and take the necessary action. Okay. So that's a quick summary about some of these advanced deep learning algorithms, vision analytics that we are using to solve some of these problems. Of course, now more and more drone-based solutions are being adopted, more specifically in the COVID. Yeah. Okay, so all these feeds have been collected, and these feeds are so huge that it is very, very difficult to manually track and identify the areas and alerts and things like that. You can use these advanced digital technologies to solve those problems. And also, if you look at the other areas, more specifically the security, compliance, and other related things, these vision technologies are very well matured, and they are being used currently.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to show how we are leveraging AI in the GSTN context on the application side of it, and what are some of the benefits that we are deriving from that. So I'll keep it short. So if you have any questions, please follow up with me, and I will I'll elaborate, or we can have much deeper dive session. So to give context, GSTN, as you guys know, it's one of the largest government tax IT systems, deals with huge amounts of data. So you can see some of the statistics. So there are 1.28 crore taxpayers with close to over 1,200 crore invoices, deals with huge amounts of money. So because of this, the complexity and the of the system and the need for it to be available all the time, and these are some of the challenges related to GSTN. So we've been working with the GSTN organization, a wonderful organization who has been at the forefront of managing the IT systems of the GST portal. So there are three ways we are deriving benefits. The first is, so it's not possible to run all of these manually. That is very inefficient. So we wanted to do a step change in the way we manage the IT operations of the GSTN portal. So here, what we have done is we are applying AI to look at all the historical incidents and the tickets that have been raised, and it is helping cluster and identify repetitive patterns. And these patterns, then we have created bots which mimic what otherwise a person would be doing, so that they can all be resolved easily. So we have also gone to the root causes of several of these issues, and we have eliminated a lot of these. So essentially close to 25% of this whole ticket resolution, which is like when somebody is facing an issue, how you resolve, has been essentially made zero touch with this. So this is resulting in huge amount of reduction in amount of time it takes for the users to get responses when they face issues. The second key aspect is in de-risking and making these systems resilient, that is taking care of it from availability, performance, and security perspective. So the approach here is, instead of waiting for a user to be impacted and for them to raise issues, so we are going to certain leading indicators which indicate whether the system is about to fail, like say the health metrics going out of whack kind of things. And we are self-healing these systems before they fail. So essentially there is huge amount of data, and it is humanly impossible to be manually looking at all this data. So that's a place where we are using AI. So we are helping do correlations between all these leading indicators to the incidents that we are seeing, and through these we are able to figure out which ones are actionable, and so we need to act on them before something goes wrong, right? So using this approach, what we have done is we are able to make these systems a lot more resilient, and through the self-healing approach and proactive monitoring, we have eliminated close to 40% of these tickets. So the third and the bigger piece is for insights. So we are leveraging AI to look at what matters from the business perspective. So in terms of GSTN, so some of the business KPIs that matter is how many hourly filings are happening, how many payments are happening. So these are the ultimate outputs that matter. So instead of just looking at IT SLAs and ensuring that system is up kind of things, we are looking at what is the overall experience and what is the overall business KPIs. And so we are monitoring these hourly to look at are there any disruptions which are going to impact any of these, so that we can proactively intervene and ensure that these business outcomes are being met. And another key thing that we have done is this business intelligence and fraud analytics. So where we are applying AI to look at all these filings to prevent fraud. So I'll elaborate a little bit more on these. So the first aspect is use of machine learning algorithms. As I said, it looks at these tickets. So it looks at the descriptions that people have given in terms of what are the issues that they're facing, and it automatically clusters and identifies what topics these are. And then we have identified what are the top 20 issues, for example, and we've been going after them. And first we see if we can eliminate. If we cannot eliminate, then we'll figure out how to automate. And in automate part, what we have done is we have taken this approach of creating kind of like digital workers. So these are bots which are stitched together to perform these repetitive tasks so that we can release these people to work on more important aspects. So the second key pillar, as I was explaining, is in terms of use of AI to the analytics. So like, for example, we start looking at, on x-axis, we have the alerts, which are from the proactive monitoring of the health of the systems, whatever alerts are getting generated. On the y-axis, we have the various services and their health. And we're looking at what are the various, is there any correlation? Like, for example, we start seeing Java heap issues and as alerts, and then we start seeing incidents related to these services. This kind of insights help us to identify which of these alerts matter and which ones we should address proactively. So the third key pillar is about insights. So what we have done is we have created something called a business control tower, through which we monitor the business KPIs that matter from, say, the GSTR 3B or 1, from the registrations perspective, from refunds perspective, like that. So for example, from the filings, we are looking at hourly filings and the hourly payments, and we are proactively monitoring these KPIs. And then we are also forecasting and predicting what these will be, so that we'll be ready for it, because it's not like uniformly used. So there is huge workload that happens during the end dates, during month ends, quarter ends, kinds of things. So from the historical data, we are predicting what is going to happen. Other key thing that we are doing is we are helping correlate this information so that we can see where are all the issues and how they are impacting various layers above. So we have the infra, the data, the middleware, the applications, and the business processes, and we are proactively monitoring them. So the next important aspect is around use of AI to detect fraud and to enable policymakers get better insights, and also give value-added services to the taxpayers. So in detecting fraud, there are a few techniques that we have used. First is reconciling all the information from, like, say, GSTR 3B to GSTR 1 to 2A, all these different forms. That's one way to detect if there are any issues. Second is anomalies. So we're looking at what is normal behavior and what is abnormal behavior. So then we are doing outlier analysis, essentially looking at forming a peer group, and then looking at are there certain filings which are deviating from these peer groups. And then next important aspect that we have done innovation on is to create a knowledge graph. So we have one of the largest knowledge graphs here with close to 200 million nodes and billions of edges, so which is powering this whole analytics on finding the relationships, because people generally create a lot of people who want to do fraud create a lot of layers of fraud companies through which they route all these transactions, which are hard to otherwise find with traditional technologies. So we have combined AI along with graph analytics to be able to identify these kind of relationships so that we can detect these fraudulent behavior better. So the next aspect is in revenue assurance. So as I said, we are looking at these filing information as well as the payment information, and we are looking at forecasting and predicting what is likely to happen so that you can be prepared for it. And the next aspect is also we are also predicting who is likely to default, and so that we can look at these early warning signs and can give that to the officers so that they can act on them. Similarly, because of all this data, there is a huge amount of insights that the policymakers can get. So these are a few examples: the supply chain analysis, the what-if analysis, the sectoral analysis, the commodity flows across the states. All these kind of insights are another things where we are using AI. And finally, the value-add services to the taxpayers. So through all of these, we were able to save close to 300 crores of rupees in the first 3 months of going live with this business intelligence and fraud analytics as well. So it's like a huge value that it is generating by applying AI and analytics into the business operations.
So there are certain data sets that are available. In fact, people like AWS and other research institutes have put together some of those data sets, more specifically the lung scan devices. So the images of that, and then from there, looking at the severity of that particular disease or whether he is a COVID infected or not. Some of those data sets are available. In fact, I can share some of those links, the open links offline. That is very, very important. See, AI is a multidisciplinary area. Okay, not only the data models, but also you need the strong physics behind it, the domain expertise behind that. Okay, so what we need to have is probably one person may not have all that information, but you need to form a team where you will be able to bring together all these aspects, and that team should be able to work on it. That is the best way to do it, so that it is a collective intelligence that matters the most. That's how the regulatory industry is doing. When a regulatory industry puts up a small team, they looks at qualitatively and quantitatively whether every aspect is covered to the extent that is possible. So that's the best answer to it. Nirmala, if you want to add.
I wanted to add, I think it's extremely important to understand that almost every industry, I think you talked about the cross-pollinated roles. To be frank, every industry and every work that we do on each of these industry is what we see as a combination of machine plus humans interactions and engagement, right? So no matter what you are doing, which industry you are in, we see a very heavy usage of AI as well as other AI ML techniques that are coming in. And the way to adopt it is obviously to build some of these intelligent assistants or what we call as live enterprise nudges and recommendations. And that is what we have done at Infosys, meaning even if I am in the education space, I already talked about how we are using, an educator is using the insights generated by AI. Even in a live classroom, he or she can actually look at how the students are learning, even though there may be 50 students or 100 students, right? Which is otherwise humanly impossible. Similarly, in the healthcare, while the ecosystem of nurses, doctors, and everyone is there, and you are trying to kind of spread your knowledge in a kind of virtual mentoring that I talked about, there again, you can use the power of AI and ML. So extremely important that almost every role, no matter what industry it is, has to be supplemented and augmented by the AI capabilities. It can start slow and small, but then you can easily scale up once you build the data.
Definitely, it is possible, I would say. And as Nandan mentioned, you need to bring that framework and strategy in place, more specifically the platform strategy. And there are various aspects associated with that platform, whether it is in terms of the interoperability and also continuously evolve that platform. In fact, Live Enterprise is one such example where we treat the platform as a kind of living organism, so that the platform can evolve and cater to the needs of the business that we are working on. So that is possible.
I'll take that. In fact, I work with our Chief Information Security Officer and who is Head of Cybersecurity Practice, Vishal Salvi, in addressing AI, in addressing cybersecurity using AI. So we are building something called Infosys Cyber Next. So essentially what we are looking at is, we have to look at it from different dimensions. One is, what are the assets that need to be controlled? Then what are the controls that we have put in place to protect those assets? And then who are all the external actors who are acting on these things? So we get a lot of information from threat intelligence feeds who talk about what are the attack patterns and who are the threat actors and what they are doing. And then by looking at our security incidents and the logs, we get a lot of insights on what is happening within the organization. So by combining all of these, now we can again apply similar principles. We have to identify clusters, we have to do this anomaly detection, we can start predicting and forecasting that if they are targeting certain employees, these are the next set of employees they're going to target. So these are some of the things that where I think there is huge scope for applying AI in the cybersecurity space.
Great, and I think that's a wrap on AI Pe Charcha as well as today's event. Thank you so much, Shyam, for taking time out to do this demo. And thank you to all our panelists and speakers for their very valuable time and insights today. And finally, a very special thank you to every one of you who attended the session and stayed with us the entire time. We really hope your patronage of India AI continues through this year as well. Stay safe, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend.